The rain hammered down like nails on metal as Ethan Cross stood alone in the empty warehouse parking lot, phone pressed to his ear, listening to his neighbor's strained voice tell him she couldn't keep Noah past 9. It was 8:47. The last bus had been canceled. His son was 8 years old and waiting. And across the dark lot, through sheets of rain, his boss, the woman everyone called the Ice Queen, was watching him with an expression he'd never seen before. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you to stick with me until the very end. Drop a like if you're ready for a story about second chances, unexpected connections, and what happens when two guarded hearts finally let their walls down. And comment below with your city. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Wellington Distribution's warehouse floor buzzed with that particular frequency that burrowed into your skull after a 12-hour shift. Ethan Cross moved between towers of cardboard boxes with mechanical precision, his scanner beeping rhythmically as he logged inventory numbers that would mean nothing to him tomorrow. His shoulders ached. His lower back had started its nightly protest around hour 9, but he kept moving because standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant counting the minutes until he could get home to Noah. "Cross, you about done in Sector 7? Marcus's voice crackled through the ancient walkie-talkie clipped to Ethan's belt. Ethan pressed the button. Last row, 5 minutes. "Make it 3. Storm's getting worse. They're talking about shutting down the buses early." The scanner slipped in Ethan's suddenly sweaty palm. He caught it before it hit the concrete, but his heart rate had already spiked. "How early?" 9 o'clock run might be the last one. It's already 8:30, man." Ethan's eyes found the institutional clock mounted high on the warehouse wall. 8:32. The bus stop was a 7-minute walk. If he ran the final inventory checks, clocked out, grabbed his jacket from his locker, he was already moving, scanner forgotten on top of a pallet, his legs carrying him toward the time clock at a pace just short of running. The other workers on the floor glanced up as he passed, but no one questioned it. Everyone here understood the tyranny of public transportation schedules. His fingers fumbled with his time card. 8:34. He could make it. He had to make it. The employee exit doors opened into a wall of water. The storm had transformed from steady rain into something biblical, the kind of downpour that turned parking lots into lakes and made the act of breathing feel like drowning. Ethan hesitated for exactly 2 seconds before plunging into it, his thin jacket instantly soaked through, rain plastering his hair to his forehead and running into his eyes. The parking lot stretched before him like an ocean. His beat-up Honda sat in the far corner where he always parked it. Employee vehicles weren't allowed in the closer spots. But the bus stop was in the opposite direction, toward the main road. Ethan ran. Water splashed up from puddles with each footfall, soaking through his work boots, the cheap waterproofing having failed sometime last winter. His breath came in gasps. The bus stop's covered shelter appeared through the rain like a mirage, and for one beautiful moment Ethan thought he'd made it. Then he saw the digital display. Route 47, canceled. Route 52, canceled. All evening service suspended due to weather. No. The word came out strangled. Ethan pulled out his phone with shaking hands, water droplets scattering across the cracked screen. 8:41. He pulled up his rideshare app. No drivers available. He tried another app. Searching. Searching. No drivers available. His call log showed 3 recent calls to Mrs. Patterson, his neighbor, the 72-year-old saint who'd agreed to watch Noah after school for $20 a day, money Ethan could barely afford but had no choice about. She'd been clear this morning. She had her book club at 9, couldn't miss it, needed him home by then. He called anyway. "Ethan?" Her voice was tight with strain. "Where are you?" "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Patterson. The buses are canceled. The storm, I'm trying to find a way home, but I have to leave at 9, Ethan. I told you this morning. My daughter's picking me up, and if I'm not ready, she gets upset with me about being late." Ethan could hear Noah in the background, his small voice asking if that was Daddy. The sound of it cracked something in Ethan's chest. "I know, I remember. I'm trying. His voice broke. "Can you give me 20 minutes, please? I'll figure something out. I just need—" "Ethan, I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't." Mrs. Patterson's voice softened. "Maybe you could call someone else? A friend?" Friends required time and energy and a social life, none of which Ethan possessed. He worked, he parented, he survived. There was no room for anything else. "I'll figure it out," he said, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice for her sake. "Thank you for watching him today. I'll get there as soon as I can." He ended the call and stood there in the inadequate shelter, rain blowing in sideways to soak him from a new angle, and felt the familiar weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. 8 years of single parenthood, and he still couldn't manage the basic logistics of getting home to his son on time. His phone buzzed. "Mrs. Patterson, I can give you until 9:15. That's the absolute latest. I'm sorry. 15 extra minutes. It was something." Ethan pulled up a different rideshare app, then another, then started calling local cab companies from a Google search, his fingers numb with cold. Busy. No cars available. Service area too far. Not operating in this weather. 8:52. The parking lot behind him was emptying out, taillights disappearing into the rain as workers fled toward dry homes and warm families. Ethan watched them go and felt himself becoming invisible again, the way he'd felt for most of his adult life. Just another struggling single dad. Just another warehouse worker. Just another person the world had decided didn't quite matter enough. Movement caught his eye. A car was pulling toward the bus stop, expensive and dark and utterly out of place in this working-class corner of the industrial district. Ethan recognized it immediately, the sleek black Audi that occupied the reserved spot closest to the building's main entrance, the spot with the small plaque reading V. Hart, Operations Director. Vivian Hart. Even thinking her name made Ethan straighten his posture instinctively. She was the kind of presence that demanded it. Tall, precise, always dressed like she was heading into a boardroom even when she was touring a warehouse floor. She'd been hired 6 months ago to optimize operations, which everyone knew meant finding ways to do more work with fewer people. Ethan had interacted with her exactly 4 times, each encounter brief and professional, her cool gray eyes assessing him the way she probably assessed everything, as a variable in an efficiency equation. The Audi pulled to a stop directly in front of the shelter, the passenger window lowered with an expensive whisper of German engineering. Vivian Hart looked out at him, her dark hair pulled back in its usual severe bun, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Cross?" Ethan's mind went blank. "Mrs. Hart? You're waiting for the bus." It wasn't a question, but Ethan nodded anyway, suddenly aware of how he must look, soaked to the bone, shivering, obviously stranded. "The buses aren't running." Again, not a question. She'd probably received the same emergency notifications he had. "Yes, ma'am." The formality felt ridiculous under the circumstances, but Ethan's brain had apparently decided that extreme politeness was the appropriate response to being caught in a moment of complete helplessness by the one person at work who intimidated him most. Vivian was quiet for a moment, her fingers tapping against the steering wheel in a rhythm that suggested internal calculation. Then, "Where do you live?" "Riverside Apartments. The complex on Maple and 3rd. He added quickly, "I'm trying to get a ride. I've called. I'm handling it. Those services aren't running in this weather. I checked before I left." Of course she had. Vivian Hart struck Ethan as someone who checked everything. "Riverside is 12 minutes from here. Get in." The words hung in the rain-thick air between them. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. You didn't accept rides from your boss, especially not a boss whose primary function seemed to be identifying inefficiencies to eliminate. But his phone said 8:56, and Noah was waiting, and Mrs. Patterson's deadline was absolute. "Are you sure?" The question came out smaller than he intended. Vivian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those gray eyes. "Mr. Cross, it's pouring rain, you're clearly stranded, and I'm offering you a ride home. The appropriate response is, 'Thank you,' followed by getting in the car before we both waste any more time." Ethan got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and something subtle and expensive that might have been perfume, or might have been whatever rich people used to make their cars smell like success. Ethan was immediately conscious of the water dripping from his clothes onto her pristine seats, of his muddy boots on her floor mats, of the vast gulf between his world and hers. "Thank you," he managed. "Really." I appreciate this. Vivian pulled smoothly out of the parking lot, her eyes on the road. You have a child. The statement made Ethan's head snap toward her. How did you... Your emergency contact form lists a school as the secondary contact point, and you've never stayed for overtime shifts, which suggests a rigid personal schedule. She glanced at him briefly. I pay attention to my employees, Mr. Cross. The way she said it made it sound like a professional obligation rather than personal interest, but something about being seen, really seen, by someone he'd assumed barely registered his existence made Ethan's throat tight. His name's Noah, Ethan said quietly. He's 8. My neighbor watches him after school, but she has to leave at 9, and with the buses... He cut himself off, aware he was over-explaining. Vivian nodded. Hence the urgency. They drove in silence for a moment. The only sound, the rhythmic swipe of windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. The streets were nearly empty, smart people having already fled indoors. How long have you worked at Wellington? Vivian asked. 3 years? Started in receiving, moved to inventory management last year. You're good at it. Your accuracy rates are among the highest in the facility. Ethan blinked. You know my accuracy rates? I review performance metrics for all employees. Yours are notably consistent. She took a smooth turn onto Maple Street. You've also never called in sick, never been late, and your efficiency scores have improved 17% since you moved to inventory management. The fact that she could cite these numbers from memory did something strange to Ethan's chest. He spent most of his life feeling invisible, just another body on the warehouse floor, another single parent struggling to keep his head above water. The idea that someone had not only noticed his work, but valued it enough to remember the specifics felt almost surreal. I just do my job, he said. You do it well. Vivian's tone was matter-of-fact, but Ethan caught something that might have been approval underneath it. That's less common than it should be. Riverside Apartments appeared through the rain, a sprawling complex of identical beige buildings that had looked tired even when Ethan moved in 3 years ago. Vivian pulled up to the main entrance, and Ethan reached for the door handle, ready to make his escape with whatever dignity he had left. Then the lights went out, not just the apartment lights, every light in the complex all at once, plunging the buildings into darkness, relieved only by the occasional glow of battery-powered emergency signs in the hallways. Jesus, Ethan breathed. He pulled out his phone, 908, and called Mrs. Patterson. Ethan? Her voice was frantic. The power just went out. Everything's dark, and Noah's scared, and I have to leave in 7 minutes. I'm here. I'm right outside. I'll be up in 2 minutes. He ended the call and turned to Vivian. Thank you so much for the ride. The power's out. She was looking at the darkened buildings with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Do you have heat? It's electric baseboard. So, no. The temperature had already started dropping, that particular October cold that cut through cheap walls and cheaper windows. But we'll be fine. I've got blankets and... Mr. Cross. Vivian's voice had taken on a different quality, something almost gentle beneath the professional precision. It's 43 degrees outside and dropping. Your building has no heat, no light, and based on the storm severity, the power company is estimating 12 to 18 hours before restoration in this area. You have an 8-year-old child. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'm aware of my situation, Ms. Hart. I'm sure you are. She was quiet for a moment, and then she did something Ethan had never seen her do. She hesitated. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost uncertain. I live 20 minutes from here. I have a guest room, heat, electricity, hot water. She paused. You and your son are welcome to stay until the power's restored. The offer was so unexpected, so far outside the bounds of their professional relationship, that Ethan's brain briefly short-circuited. We couldn't impose like that. You wouldn't be imposing. I'm offering. Vivian's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Mr. Cross? Ethan? I understand this is unusual, but it's late, it's cold, your child is frightened, and I have the resources to help. The logical choice is obvious. She'd used his first name. In 6 months of working under her management, she'd never used his first name. Why? The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Why would you do this? Vivian looked at him then. really looked at him, and for just a moment the Ice Queen facade cracked enough to reveal something underneath, something lonely, something that understood what it meant to be isolated. Because someone should, she said simply. And right now, I'm the someone who can. Ethan thought about Noah, scared in the dark, about Mrs. Patterson's immovable deadline, about the long, cold night ahead in an apartment with no heat and no light. He thought about pride, about professionalism, about all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then he thought about his son, and the decision made itself. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, thank you. Vivian nodded once, crisp and professional, but Ethan caught the slight relaxation in her shoulders. Get your son. I'll wait here. The apartment stairwell was pitch black and crowded with residents trying to navigate their way down with cell phone flashlights. Ethan took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding, and burst through the door to find Mrs. Patterson standing in his apartment doorway with her coat on and Noah clutched against her side, his small face pressed into her cardigan. "Daddy!" Noah launched himself at Ethan, and Ethan caught him, lifting his son into his arms despite the protest in his back. "Hey, buddy, I'm here. I'm sorry I'm late. The lights went out and it got really dark and I couldn't find Mr. Whiskers." Noah's words tumbled over each other, 8-year-old panic making his voice high and thin. "We'll find him, I promise." Ethan looked at Mrs. Patterson over Noah's head. "Thank you. I'm so sorry about... Just take care of that boy." She was already moving toward the stairs, where her daughter's voice was calling up impatiently. "Stay warm, Ethan." She disappeared into the darkness, and Ethan was left standing in his pitch-black apartment with Noah shaking in his arms. He fumbled for his phone flashlight, sweeping it across the small living room until he spotted the worn stuffed cat wedged behind the couch. There he is. Ethan grabbed Mr. Whiskers and pressed him into Noah's hands. "Okay, buddy, I need you to listen carefully. We're not staying here tonight." Noah's eyes went wide. "Where are we going?" "My boss, Ms. Hart, she's offered to let us stay at her house until the power comes back on. Just for tonight, maybe tomorrow. She has heat and lights and... Is she nice?" Noah's voice was small, uncertain. Ethan thought about Vivian's cool professionalism, her reputation as the Ice Queen, the way she'd looked at him in the car and said, "Because someone should." "Yeah," he said softly. "Yeah, buddy, I think she is." 10 minutes later, Ethan had thrown together a bag with clothes for both of them, Noah's schoolwork, and the essentials for an overnight stay. They made their way back down the dark stairwell. Noah's hand tightened his, and emerged into the rain to find Vivian's Audi still idling by the curb, interior light on, waiting. Ethan opened the back door and helped Noah into the car seat that Vivian had somehow produced and already installed. His son looked tiny and overwhelmed in the expensive leather interior. Mr. Whiskers clutched to his chest, his eyes wide as he took in their unexpected host. "Hi," Noah whispered. Vivian turned in her seat to look at him, and Ethan watched something extraordinary happen. The Ice Queen smiled. It was small, careful, like she wasn't entirely sure how the expression worked, but it was real. "Hello, Noah," she said gently. "My name is Vivian. You're going to stay at my house tonight where it's warm and dry. Is that okay with you?" Noah nodded slowly, then looked at Ethan for confirmation. Ethan squeezed his son's knee reassuringly before sliding into the passenger seat. "Thank you," he said again, knowing the words were inadequate. Vivian just nodded and pulled away from the curb, navigating the flooded streets with the same precise competence she brought to everything else. The drive to her house took them out of the industrial Riverside area and into the kind of neighborhood Ethan usually only saw from bus windows. Tree-lined streets with actual trees, houses instead of apartment complexes. The warm glow of porch lights that ran on circuits that didn't fail the moment a storm hit. Vivian's house was a 2-story craftsman with a neat lawn and flower beds that suggested someone actually had time for gardening. She pulled into the garage, and Ethan caught Noah's expression of wonder as the door closed behind them, sealing out the rain and wind. "Come on," Vivian said, her voice still carrying that unexpected gentleness. "Let's get you both dried off." The interior of her house was exactly what Ethan had expected, clean, ordered, decorated with the kind of minimalist taste that came from having both money and restraint. Hardwood floors, tasteful artwork, Furniture that looked comfortable but also like it cost more than Ethan made in a month. But there were unexpected touches too. A well-loved paperback on the coffee table, a throw blanket draped over the couch that was soft and worn, photographs on the mantel that suggested Vivian had a life beyond the warehouse floor. "The bathroom is down the hall," Vivian said, already moving toward what Ethan assumed was a linen closet. "I'll get you towels. There are clean clothes in the guest room. They'll be too big, but they're dry." She produced towels that were thick and soft, the kind Ethan had forgotten existed, and showed them to a bathroom that was bigger than Noah's entire bedroom. Ethan caught sight of himself in the mirror, soaked, exhausted, looking every one of his 32 years, and felt a wave of surreal displacement. 12 hours ago, he'd been scanning boxes in a warehouse. Now he was standing in his boss's house, about to put his son to bed in her guest room, and nothing about any of this made sense. But Noah was already pulling off his wet clothes, chattering about how big the shower was, and Ethan didn't have the energy to question the universe's strange mercy. 20 minutes later, both of them were dry and wearing oversized sweats that Vivian had left outside the bathroom door. Noah looked like he was swimming in the child-sized t-shirt she'd somehow produced, and Ethan didn't want to think about why she had children's clothes in her house. Maybe a nephew. Maybe a past he had no right to know about. They emerged to find Vivian in the kitchen, having changed into jeans and a soft sweater that made her look almost unrecognizable. Without the armor of her work clothes, without the severe bun, her hair was down now, falling in dark waves past her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, more human. "I made hot chocolate," she said, and Ethan noticed she wouldn't quite meet his eyes. "I wasn't sure if Noah would be hungry, but I have. Hot chocolate is perfect," Ethan said quickly. "Thank you." They sat at her kitchen table, real wood, sturdy, the kind of furniture that lasted, and Noah wrapped both hands around his mug like it was treasure. Vivian had topped it with whipped cream and mini marshmallows, and Ethan watched his son's face light up with simple joy. "This is really good," Noah said seriously, his voice still carrying that solemn tone he got when talking to adults he was trying to impress. "I'm glad you like it." Vivian's smile was less uncertain this time, more natural. "My nephew loves hot chocolate. He usually demands extra marshmallows." So there was a nephew. Ethan filed that information away, adding it to the growing list of things he was learning about the woman he'd thought he knew. "How old is your nephew?" Noah asked, because 8-year-olds had no concept of professional boundaries. 7. His name is Miles. Vivian's expression softened. He likes soccer and dinosaurs and asking approximately 800 questions about everything. "I like dinosaurs too." Noah's exhaustion was temporarily forgotten in the excitement of shared interests. "My favorite is the Ankylosaurus because it has armor and a clubbed tail, and..." He launched into an enthusiastic explanation of ankylosaur defense mechanisms, and Ethan started to apologize. But Vivian was listening with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking follow-up questions about herbivore adaptations and Mesozoic ecosystems. She spoke to Noah like he was a person worth listening to, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. By the time Noah's eyes started drooping, it was past 10. Vivian showed them to the guest room, a clean, comfortable space with a real bed and actual curtains, and Noah was asleep almost before his head hit the pillow, Mr. Whiskers tucked under his chin. Ethan stood in the doorway watching his son sleep, feeling the day's adrenaline finally start to drain. "He's a good kid," Vivian said quietly from behind him. "He's the best thing I've ever done." The words came out raw, honest, unfiltered by professionalism or propriety. They moved back to the living room, and Ethan found himself sitting on her couch, accepting the glass of water she offered because his body had apparently decided it was done being polite and needed hydration now. "I really can't thank you enough for this," he said. "I don't know what we would have done if... You would have figured something out. You clearly always do." Vivian sat in the chair across from him, curling her legs underneath her in a gesture that was startlingly informal. "How long have you been on your own with Noah?" The question should have felt invasive, but somehow it didn't. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way she'd asked it, genuine curiosity without pity. 6 years since he was 2. Ethan stared at the water in his glass. His mom, Sarah, she died in a car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. I'm sorry. The words were simple, but Vivian's voice carried real empathy. That must have been, I can't imagine. The first year was, Ethan's voice caught. He never talked about this. Never. But something about the quiet house and Vivian's patient attention made the words come. I didn't know how to be a single parent. I barely knew how to be a parent at all. Noah was so little, and he didn't understand why his mom wasn't coming home, and I was drowning. Working double shifts, trying to afford daycare, forgetting to eat, forgetting to sleep. He looked up at her. You learn, though. You figure it out because you have to, because there's a little person depending on you. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. You're doing a remarkable job. I'm barely keeping my head above water most days. That's not what I see. She leaned forward slightly. I see someone who shows up every day, who works hard, who's raising a kind, curious child on his own. That's not barely surviving, Ethan. That's succeeding against significant odds. The use of his first name again, the sincerity in her voice, it broke something loose in Ethan's chest. He felt dangerously close to tears, which was ridiculous. He didn't cry. He didn't have time for crying. Why are you being so nice to me? The question came out more vulnerable than he'd intended. 6 months, and you've barely said 10 words to me, and now I know how I come across at work. Vivian's voice was quiet. I know what people call me. The ice queen, the efficiency expert who doesn't care about the human cost. She paused. It's easier that way. Easier to make hard decisions when people don't expect warmth from you. But that's not really you, isn't it? Her smile was sad. I've been divorced for 3 years. I work 60-hour weeks. My social life consists of my nephew's soccer games and video calls with my sister. I'm good at my job because I've made it my entire life. She met his eyes. Tonight, seeing you stranded in the rain, I realized I've been so focused on being professional that I forgot how to be decent. You needed help. I could help. It shouldn't be more complicated than that. Ethan understood isolation. He'd lived in it for 6 years. But hearing Vivian describe her own loneliness, seeing the vulnerability underneath her carefully constructed competence, made him realize something. Maybe they weren't so different after all. For what it's worth, he said softly, I think you're more than decent. Vivian's expression shifted, surprise, then something warmer, something almost shy. Thank you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the rain still drumming against the windows, the house warm and quiet around them. Ethan felt the exhaustion pulling at him, but he didn't want to break this strange, fragile connection they'd stumbled into. I should let you get some sleep, Vivian finally said, standing. You've had a long day. Ethan stood too, swaying slightly with tiredness. Vivian, he paused, realizing he'd used her first name without thinking. Is that okay, calling you Vivian? Her smile was soft, real. Outside of work? Yes, I'd like that. Vivian, he said again, savoring the intimacy of it. Thank you. For all of this. For seeing us. For caring. Get some rest, Ethan. Her voice was gentle. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. Ethan made his way to the guest room, where Noah was still dead to the world, his small chest rising and falling with the deep breathing of childhood sleep. He climbed carefully into the other side of the bed, feeling the softness of real sheets, the warmth of a house that didn't depend on failing electrical systems. His last thought before sleep took him was that sometimes, in the middle of storms and power outages and impossible logistics, the universe offered unexpected shelter. And sometimes that shelter came in the form of a woman with gray eyes and a reputation for coldness who made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and saw you when you'd forgotten what being seen felt like. Sometimes on the worst nights, you found out what kindness really meant. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through curtains that actually blocked out the world, a luxury Ethan had forgotten existed. He woke to the unfamiliar sensation of having slept through the night without interruption, his body warm, his back not screaming in protest. For a disoriented moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then Noah shifted beside him, and the previous night came flooding back. Vivian's house, the storm, the unexpected kindness. Ethan checked his phone, 6:47 a.m. He had 13 missed notifications from the power company, all saying the same thing. Estimated restoration time now 6 p.m. Noah's school started at 8:30. Ethan's shift started at 7. The logistics crashed down on him like cold water. He slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Noah, and padded out into the hallway in his borrowed sweats. The house was quiet, but he could smell coffee, which meant Vivian was already awake. He followed the scent to the kitchen and found her standing at the counter in professional slacks and a crisp white blouse, her hair back in its usual severe bun, makeup perfect. She looked every inch the operations director again, except for the bare feet and the mug of coffee cradled in both hands. "Good morning." Her voice was soft, conscious of Noah still sleeping. "I made coffee. Mugs are in the cabinet above the pot. You're up early." Ethan poured himself a cup, and the first sip was so much better than the instant powder he usually dumped into lukewarm water that he almost groaned. "I'm always up early, years of corporate conditioning." Vivian gestured to her tablet on the counter, which displayed what looked like work emails. "I've already contacted Wellington. They're running a skeleton crew today due to the storm damage. Non-essential personnel have the day off." Ethan's stomach dropped. "I'm essential personnel?" "No, you're not." She met his eyes over the rim of her coffee mug. "I made sure of that this morning. You have the day off, paid. Consider it storm leave." "You didn't have to." "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to." She set her mug down with careful precision. "Your apartment has no power, no heat, and based on the latest updates, won't have either until tonight at the earliest. You can't take Noah to school because you don't have transportation, and even if you did, half the schools in the district are closed due to power outages." She paused. "So here's what I'm proposing. You and Noah stay here for the day. I have a home office where I'll be working remotely. There's food in the kitchen, internet, heat. Noah can do his schoolwork if he has any, or he can watch television, or he can exist as an 8-year-old without obligations for one day." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Everything she'd said was logical, practical, and solving problems he'd been trying to figure out since waking up. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. Vivian was silent for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee mug. "Do you know what I did last night after you went to bed?" Ethan shook his head. "I sat in my living room and listened to the sound of people breathing in my house. You and Noah sleeping in the guest room. And I realized it was the first time in 3 years that this place has felt like a home instead of just a house I sleep in." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm not doing this out of pity, Ethan. I'm doing it because having you here reminds me what it feels like to care about someone other than myself." The raw honesty in her words left Ethan momentarily speechless. He thought about reaching for her hand, about closing the distance between them, but the boundaries were still too new, too uncertain. "Okay," he said instead. "We'll stay, thank you." Vivian's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Good. Now, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." "Last night, when Noah was drinking his hot chocolate, I noticed he was coughing. Small coughs, infrequent, but persistent." Her gray eyes were sharp with concern. "How long has that been happening?" Ethan's hand tightened around his coffee mug. "A few weeks, maybe a month. He had a cold that turned into a chest thing, but he's been better." "Has he seen a doctor?" The question landed like a physical blow. Ethan looked away, shame burning in his chest. "The clinic we go to requires payment up front. I've been saving, but between rent and Mrs. Patterson and—" He cut himself off. "I'm handling it." "Ethan," Vivian's voice was gentle but firm. "That's not handling it. That's hoping a problem resolves itself while you're underwater trying to survive." "I know that." The words came out sharper than he'd intended. "I know I should have taken him already. I know I'm failing him. You don't have to—" "Stop." She moved closer, and Ethan could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "I wasn't criticizing you. I was offering to help." She paused. "My sister is a pediatrician. She owes me approximately 600 favors. I could call her, get Noah seen today if you'd like. No charge, No judgment, just making sure he's okay. Ethan felt something crack in his chest. I can't keep taking things from you. You're not taking, I'm offering. There's a difference. Vivian's expression softened. Let me help, Ethan, please. The please broke through his defenses. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. Vivian pulled out her phone and stepped away, her voice dropping to a murmur as she made the call. Ethan heard fragments. My nephew's age, persistent cough, yes, today would be ideal, and felt the surreal sensation of watching someone move mountains on his behalf with a simple phone call. She returned 2 minutes later. Rebecca can see him at 11. Her office is 15 minutes from here. Vivian, I don't know how to... Thank me by letting Noah eat breakfast before he wakes up ravenous. She moved to the refrigerator with purpose. Does he like pancakes? As if summoned by the mention of food, Noah appeared in the doorway, Mr. Whiskers dangling from one hand, his borrowed t-shirt askew. His hair was sticking up in 6 different directions, and he looked small and sleepy and perfect. Good morning, buddy. Ethan crossed to him, running a hand through his son's chaotic hair. How'd you sleep? Good. The bed is really soft. Noah's eyes found Vivian, and he offered a shy smile. Hi, Miss Vivian. Just Vivian is fine. She was already pulling ingredients from cupboards with practiced efficiency. And good morning to you too, Noah. I'm making pancakes. Do you like chocolate chips in yours? Noah's eyes went wide. Yes, please. Watching Vivian cook was like watching her manage the warehouse floor, precise, efficient, but with unexpected moments of creativity. She let Noah help measure ingredients, responding to his constant stream of questions with patience Ethan hadn't known she possessed. Why do you put vanilla in pancakes? Noah asked, standing on a step stool so he could see into the mixing bowl. Because it makes them taste more interesting. Pancakes without vanilla are just flatbread circles. Vivian handed him the measuring spoon. 1 teaspoon. Be careful not to spill. Noah poured with the intense concentration of a surgeon, his tongue between his teeth. When he succeeded without spilling a drop, Vivian smiled at him like he'd accomplished something genuinely impressive. Perfect. You're a natural. They ate breakfast at the kitchen table as rain continued to fall outside, softer now, but persistent. Noah devoured 4 pancakes, syrup dripping down his chin, chattering about dinosaurs and his favorite video game and whether Vivian thought velociraptors could really open doors like in the movies. I think they probably could, Vivian said seriously. They were highly intelligent hunters with opposable claws. Door handles would present a challenge, but not an insurmountable one. See, Dad? Noah turned to Ethan triumphantly. I told you they were smart. You were right, buddy. Ethan caught Vivian's eyes across the table, and she smiled, small, private, meant just for him. After breakfast, Vivian retreated to her home office for a video conference, and Ethan helped Noah with the homework he'd brought in their overnight bag. They sprawled on the living room floor, Noah's math worksheet between them, and Ethan tried not to think about how different this was from their usual cramped kitchen table routine. Dad? Noah looked up from his multiplication problems. Is Miss Vivian your friend? The question caught Ethan off guard. Yeah, buddy. I guess she is. She's really nice, and she makes good pancakes. Noah chewed on the end of his pencil thoughtfully. Do you think we could come back and visit sometime? Ethan's throat tightened. Maybe. We'll have to see. At 10:30, Vivian emerged from her office looking slightly frazzled. That was 3 hours of discussing quarterly projections with people who don't understand basic logistics. She noticed Noah sprawled on the couch reading a book from her shelf. Finding everything okay? This book is really good. Noah held up a paperback with a dragon on the cover. Can I finish it? Of course. You can borrow it if you'd like. Vivian glanced at Ethan. We should leave in about 20 minutes if we're going to make it to Rebecca's office on time. The drive to the pediatrician's office took them through neighborhoods that got progressively nicer, the houses larger, the lawns more manicured. Noah pressed his face against the window, narrating everything he saw with the running commentary of childhood. Dr. Rebecca Chen's office was in a medical complex that looked more like a spa than a clinic. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, abstract art on the walls. Rebecca herself appeared in the waiting room moments after they arrived, and the family resemblance to Vivian was immediate. Same dark hair, same sharp intelligence in her eyes, but where Vivian projected controlled precision, Rebecca radiated warmth. "You must be Noah." Rebecca crouched down to Noah's level, her smile genuine. "I'm Dr. Chen, but you can call me Dr. Rebecca. Your Aunt Vivian told me you've been having some coughing." "She's not my aunt," Noah said, then looked worried he'd been rude. "But she's nice. She made me pancakes with chocolate chips." "Did she?" Rebecca shot Vivian an amused look. "My sister, the secret pancake chef? Who knew?" She turned back to Noah. "Want to come back to the exam room with me? I promise no shots today, just listening to your lungs." Noah looked to Ethan for permission, and Ethan nodded. "I'll be right here, buddy." As Rebecca led Noah away, chattering to him about the stethoscope and what lungs sounded like, Vivian sank into the chair beside Ethan. "She's going to tease me mercilessly about the pancakes," she said, but there was affection in her voice. "You two seem close." "She's my younger sister by 4 years. Growing up, I was the serious one. She was the social one. I focused on business school. She focused on saving the world one patient at a time." Vivian's expression softened. "She's a better person than I am." "I don't think that's true. You've known me for less than 24 hours outside of work, Ethan. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not sure good person makes the list." Ethan turned to face her fully. "You took in a stranded employee and his kid in the middle of a storm. You're getting his son medical care. You made chocolate chip pancakes at 7 in the morning. What part of that isn't good?" Vivian looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Surprise, vulnerability, something that might have been hope. "You have a very generous view of people. Only when they've earned it." They sat in comfortable silence until Rebecca emerged 20 minutes later with Noah, who was sporting a sticker on his shirt that said, "Brave Patient." "So," Rebecca said, her professional demeanor firmly in place, "the good news is it's not pneumonia or anything serious. The bad news is Noah has developed mild reactive airway disease, likely from the chest cold he had last month. It's common in kids his age, very treatable, but it needs to be managed." Ethan's stomach clenched. "Managed how?" "I'm prescribing an inhaler to use twice daily, and a rescue inhaler for when the coughing gets bad. With consistent use, he should be back to normal in a few weeks." Rebecca handed him 2 prescriptions. "I'm also recommending a follow-up in 2 weeks to make sure his lung function is improving." Ethan took the papers with shaking hands, already calculating costs he couldn't afford. Inhalers were expensive. Follow-up appointments were expensive. Everything was always expensive. "Thank you," he managed. "I appreciate you seeing him on such short notice." Rebecca's eyes were kind. "Noah's a great kid. Take care of him." She glanced at Vivian. "And you call me later. We need to talk about your sudden interest in playing house." Vivian's cheeks flushed slightly, but she just rolled her eyes. "Goodbye, Rebecca." In the car, Noah was quiet, his small hands fidgeting with Mr. Whiskers. Ethan recognized the signs of anxiety. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" "Doctor, Rebecca said my lungs aren't working right." Noah's voice was small, scared. "Does that mean I'm sick like Mommy was sick?" Ethan's heart shattered. He twisted in his seat to look at his son. "No, Noah, not even close. Your mom had a car accident. This is just a little thing with your breathing that medicine will fix. You're going to be completely fine." "Promise?" "I promise." Ethan reached back to squeeze Noah's hand. "You're going to be okay." Vivian was quiet during the drive back to her house, but Ethan caught her glancing at him, concern evident in the set of her shoulders. When they pulled into her garage, she turned to Noah. "Hey, Noah, I have something in the house that might cheer you up. Do you like video games?" Noah's face brightened immediately. Yes. I don't have a console, but my friend Marcus has one, and sometimes I play at his house. I have my nephew's old gaming system in the basement. He upgraded last year and left the old one here. Want to try it?" 20 minutes later, Noah was completely absorbed in a racing game, sprawled on the basement couch with a juice box and a level of joy Ethan rarely saw in their cramped apartment. Vivian led Ethan back upstairs to the kitchen, where she immediately began making tea with the same focused precision she brought to everything. "That was kind," Ethan said quietly. The video game thing. He looked scared. Kids shouldn't have to be scared. Vivian poured hot water over tea bags, her movements careful. How are you doing? Ethan's voice cracked, and suddenly he wasn't fine at all. The weight of the prescriptions in his pocket, the fear in Noah's eyes, the endless calculations of costs he couldn't cover, it all crashed down at once. I don't know how I'm going to pay for those medications. Vivian set down the kettle with controlled gentleness. How much are they? I don't know yet, but inhalers are usually $150 each, and he needs 2 plus the follow-up appointment. Ethan pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm sorry. This isn't your problem. I shouldn't be. Ethan, Vivian's voice was firm. Look at me. He lowered his hands, and she was standing closer than before, her gray eyes intense. I'm going to say something, and I need you to listen without immediately rejecting it out of pride. She took a breath. Let me cover the prescriptions and the follow-up appointment. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better, but let me help. I can't. Yes, you can. You just don't want to, because accepting help feels like failing. Her voice softened. But you're not failing, Ethan. You're drowning because the system is designed to let people like you drown. Let me throw you a rope. Ethan felt tears pressing behind his eyes, hot and unwelcome. Why do you care this much? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I was married, I spent 5 years begging my husband to see me. Really see me, not the successful career woman or the person who had her life together, but me, the person underneath who was lonely and scared and didn't know how to ask for help. She met his eyes. He never did. He looked right through me until the day he left. And last night, standing in that parking lot, I saw you. Really saw you. And I won't look away now. The vulnerability in her confession left Ethan breathless. He understood suddenly that this wasn't about charity or pity. This was about 2 people who'd both been invisible finding each other in the dark. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, I'll let you help, but I'm paying you back, even if it takes a year. Deal. Vivian's smile was small but real. Now drink your tea before it gets cold. They spent the afternoon in a strange domestic rhythm that felt both surreal and natural. Vivian worked in her office, video conferences punctuated by the sounds of Noah's video game victories from the basement. Ethan tried to make himself useful, doing dishes, tidying the already immaculate living room, feeling useless and grateful in equal measure. Around 3, Noah appeared upstairs, his energy finally flagging. Dad, I'm tired. Okay, buddy, want to take a nap? Can I nap on the big couch? It's really comfortable. Vivian emerged from her office at the sound of voices. Of course you can. I'll get you a blanket. She returned with the worn throw blanket from her couch, and Noah curled up like a cat, Mr. Whiskers under his chin. Within minutes, he was asleep, his breathing deep and even. Ethan stood watching his son sleep, and Vivian came to stand beside him. He's resilient, she said quietly. He'll be fine. I know, I worry, all the time, about everything. Ethan's voice was rough. About whether I'm enough for him, whether he's happy, whether I'm screwing him up by being all he has. You're not screwing him up, you're loving him. That's all any kid really needs. Vivian paused. Can I ask you something personal? After everything today? Yeah. Do you ever let yourself stop? Stop working, stop worrying, stop being the sole person responsible for another human's existence? Ethan laughed, but it was hollow. Not really. Can't afford to. What if you could, just for a few hours? Vivian's voice was soft. What would you do? The question caught him off guard. Ethan tried to remember the last time he'd done something just for himself, just for the pleasure of it, and came up empty. I don't know, he admitted. I used to like reading. Before Noah, before Sarah died, I'd read constantly. Science fiction, fantasy, anything that took me somewhere else. But there's never time. Vivian disappeared without a word, returning moments later with 3 books. I have an entire shelf of science fiction I've never read. Gifts from well-meaning relatives who don't understand that I only read business books and mysteries. She held them out. Borrow these. Read them. Give yourself permission to exist as something other than a father and a warehouse worker for a few hours. Ethan took the books, their weight solid and real in his hands. You're dangerous, you know that? Dangerous how? You make me think I deserve things. Rest, help, kindness. He met her eyes. I've spent 6 years believing I don't deserve any of that. Maybe it's time to stop believing that. Vivian's voice was gentle. Maybe you deserve all of it and more. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Ethan didn't have words for. He was acutely aware of how close she was standing, of the way afternoon light caught in her dark hair, of the fact that she was looking at him like he mattered. Vivian, he started, then stopped, not knowing how to finish. Yes? He took a breath. You're not what I expected, at all. You're so much more than the ice queen everyone thinks you are. Her expression shifted, surprise melting into something warmer. You're not what I expected either. I thought you were just another employee, another number on a spreadsheet, but you're... She paused, searching for words. You're real. You're present. You see people, even when you're drowning. I see you, Ethan said quietly. I've been seeing you all day, and you're remarkable. The words hung in the air between them, too honest, too vulnerable. Vivian's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked away, but she was smiling. Thank you, she whispered. They stood there in her living room, Noah sleeping on the couch, rain pattering against the windows, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. His phone buzzed with the notification. Power restored at Riverside Apartments. Estimated time 6 p.m. as scheduled. Our power's coming back on, he said, trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice. Vivian nodded, but she didn't look relieved. I suppose you'll want to get home, make sure everything's okay. Yeah, I should. Ethan glanced at Noah, still peacefully asleep. We should let him rest a bit longer, though, if that's okay. Of course it's okay. Stay as long as you need. They ended up sitting on opposite ends of the couch, Noah between them, talking in low voices about nothing important and everything that mattered. Vivian told him about her nephew Miles, about her sister's chaotic household, about the years she'd spent climbing corporate ladders, only to realize she was climbing toward nothing that made her happy. Ethan told her about Noah's obsession with dinosaurs, about the time he'd tried to make Sarah's famous lasagna and set off the smoke alarm, about the small moments of fatherhood that made everything else worth it. When Noah finally woke, groggy and disoriented, it was almost 5. Ethan knew they needed to leave, needed to return to their real lives, but he found himself reluctant to break the bubble of warmth they'd created. Vivian drove them home as the sun began its descent, the sky clearing after 2 days of storms. The Riverside Apartments looked exactly as depressing as Ethan remembered, but the lights were on, smoke rising from vents as heat kicked back in. Thank you, Ethan said as they idled in front of his building. For everything, the ride, the house, Noah's appointment, the books, all of it. You're welcome. Vivian's voice was soft. Ethan, I want you to know this wasn't a one-time thing for me. I meant what I said earlier. I see you now, and I don't want to stop seeing you. Ethan's heart kicked against his ribs. What does that mean? It means I'd like to be your friend. Really your friend, not just your boss who occasionally gives you rides in storms. She paused. If you want that too. I want that. The words came out too fast, too honest. I really want that. Vivian smiled, and it transformed her face into something luminous. Good. Then let's figure out what that looks like. Noah piped up from the back seat. Can we come back and visit? And play video games? Anytime you want, Vivian said, turning to smile at him. I'll even make more chocolate chip pancakes. They gathered their meager belongings and climbed out of the warm car into the cold October evening. Ethan watched Vivian drive away, her taillights disappearing into traffic, and felt the sharp pang of loss. Dad? Noah tugged on his hand. I like Ms. Vivian. She's nice. Yeah, buddy. Me too. Their apartment was cold despite the heat being restored, the air stale from 2 days of being sealed up. Ethan flipped on lights, checked that nothing had been damaged, tried to ignore how small and shabby everything looked after Vivian's house. His phone buzzed with a text. Prescriptions ready at the pharmacy on Oak Street. Already paid for. Don't argue. V. Ethan stared at the message, something warm unfurling in his chest. She'd called the prescriptions in, paid for them, taken care of it before he'd even had a chance to worry about logistics. He typed back, "You're impossible. Thank you." Her response came immediately. "You're welcome. Sleep well, Ethan. See you at work Monday." Monday. Work. The real world crashing back in with all its complications. Ethan thought about professional boundaries, about power dynamics, about all the reasons this strange connection between them was complicated. Then he thought about gray eyes and chocolate chip pancakes and the way Vivian had looked at him like he mattered and decided that some complications were worth navigating. He picked up the prescription that night, getting Noah started on his medication routine. As he tucked his son into bed, their own bed in their own shabby apartment, Noah looked up at him with serious eyes. "Dad? Do you think Ms. Vivian gets lonely in that big house by herself?" The question pierced straight through Ethan's heart. "Yeah, buddy, I think maybe she does. Maybe we could visit her again, so she's not lonely." "Maybe we could," Ethan agreed, pressing a kiss to Noah's forehead. "Now get some sleep. School tomorrow." Alone in his own bed later, Ethan picked up one of the science fiction novels Vivian had lent him and cracked it open. The first page pulled him in immediately, and he read for an hour before exhaustion finally dragged him under. His last conscious thought was that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found someone who saw him as more than just a struggling single dad or a warehouse worker or a statistic. Maybe he'd found someone who saw the person underneath all of that. And maybe, terrifyingly and wonderfully, she'd let him see her too. Monday morning arrived with the cruel indifference of all Mondays, dragging Ethan from sleep at 5:30 with the insistent beeping of his phone alarm. He dragged himself through the morning routine. Shower, dress, wake Noah, make breakfast from whatever was left in the fridge, and tried not to think about how different it had been at Vivian's house. How easy. How warm. The bus ride to work felt longer than usual, the fluorescent lights harsh after 2 days away. Ethan clocked in at 6:58, grabbed his scanner, and headed to the warehouse floor, bracing himself for the return to normal. Except nothing felt normal anymore. Marcus caught up with him before the first coffee break, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Heard you got stranded in the storm Thursday night. That must have sucked." "Yeah, it was, Ethan paused, unsure how to explain. "It worked out okay. Man, I was stuck at my sister's place with her 3 kids screaming bloody murder about the power being out. Worst 2 days of my life." Marcus grabbed a box cutter from his belt. "You make it home all right?" Eventually. Ethan kept his eyes on his scanner, uncomfortable with the half-truth. He didn't see Vivian all morning. Her office was on the second floor, separated from the warehouse floor by concrete and professional distance. Ethan told himself it was better this way, that whatever strange intimacy they'd built over the weekend needed to stay separate from work. But he found himself glancing toward the stairs anyway, watching for her. At noon, his phone buzzed with a text. "Lunch break at 12:30. There's a sandwich shop 2 blocks east. We should talk." Ethan's pulse kicked up. He typed back, "I'll be there." The sandwich shop was the kind of place that catered to the industrial district. Cheap, fast, plastic tables bolted to the floor. Vivian was already there when Ethan arrived, sitting in a back corner booth, looking deeply out of place in her tailored suit among the construction workers and warehouse staff. She'd ordered him a sandwich without asking, somehow knowing he'd skip lunch to save money if left to his own devices. "Hi." She pushed the sandwich toward him as he slid into the booth across from her. "Hi." Ethan unwrapped the sandwich, turkey and Swiss, his favorite, and tried to ignore how much it meant that she'd remembered. "You said we should talk." "I did." Vivian's fingers traced patterns on her water bottle, a nervous gesture he'd never seen her make at work. "I've been thinking about this weekend, about what it means going forward." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Okay. We have a complicated situation." Her voice was measured, professional, but her eyes were uncertain. "I'm your supervisor. There are power dynamics at play, policies about fraternization, legitimate concerns about favoritism or the appearance of impropriety." "I know." Ethan set down his sandwich, appetite gone. "If you're saying we need to pretend this weekend didn't happen, I understand. That's not what I'm saying." Vivian cut him off gently. I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Whatever this is, it matters to me. You matter to me. And I don't want to compromise your position at work or put either of us in an untenable situation. So what are you suggesting? Transparency. If we're going to be friends, really friends, we need to be honest about it. Not hiding it, but not advertising it either. Professional at work, personal outside of it. Clear boundaries. She met his eyes. Does that make sense? Relief flooded through Ethan. Yes, that makes sense. Good. Vivian's shoulders relaxed slightly. Because I meant what I said Saturday. I don't want to stop seeing you. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the noise of the lunch rush providing cover for their private conversation. Ethan was halfway through his sandwich when Vivian spoke again. How's Noah doing? With the inhaler? Good. Better, actually. The coughing's already less frequent. Ethan smiled. He asked this morning if we could visit you again, specifically mentioned the video games and pancakes. He's welcome anytime. Both of you are. Vivian paused. Actually, I was thinking, Miles has a soccer game Saturday afternoon. Rebecca usually drags me along to watch. Would you and Noah want to come? It might be nice for Noah to meet another kid his age. The casual invitation, offered so simply, made Ethan's chest tight. You sure? That's family stuff. We don't want to intrude. Ethan, Vivian's voice was soft. You're not intruding. I'm inviting you. There's a difference. Okay, yeah, we'd love to come. Vivian's smile was luminous. Good. I'll text you the details. They walked back to the warehouse together, maintaining careful distance, their conversation shifting to work-appropriate topics. But Ethan caught the small smile playing at the corners of Vivian's mouth, and knew she felt it too. The strange, giddy anticipation of something new beginning. The week passed in a blur of routine punctuated by text messages. Vivian sent him photos of books she thought he'd like, articles about managing reactive airway disease in children, random observations about her day that made him laugh. Ethan sent back pictures of Noah's dinosaur drawings, updates on his progress through the science fiction novel, his own scattered thoughts about everything and nothing. It felt like being a teenager again, that constant low-grade excitement of waiting for the next message. Except Ethan had never really had this as a teenager, too busy working to help his mom, too focused on survival to think about connection. So this felt new and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Friday night, Ethan was making dinner, pasta with the cheap jarred sauce that Noah loved, when his phone rang. Vivian's name on the screen. Hey, he answered, cradling the phone between his ear and shoulder as he stirred the pot. Hey. Her voice sounded strange, tight. I need to tell you something before you hear it through the workplace grapevine. Ethan's hand stilled on the spoon. What's wrong? Corporate's implementing layoffs, 20% of the workforce across all divisions. Vivian's words came out clipped, professional, but Ethan could hear the strain underneath. The announcement's Monday. I've spent all week in meetings, reviewing personnel files, trying to protect as many positions as possible, but am I being laid off? Ethan's voice came out steadier than he felt. No, your position is safe. Your performance metrics make you untouchable. She paused. But people you work with won't be so lucky. Marcus is on the list. Jennifer in receiving. Tom from loading dock. Good people who don't deserve this. Ethan felt sick. Marcus had 3 kids and a mortgage. Jennifer was putting herself through community college at night. Tom was 2 years from retirement. When do they find out? Monday morning, HR wants everyone assembled at 8. Vivian's voice cracked slightly. I hate this, Ethan. This is the part of my job that makes me feel like a monster. You're not a monster. You're doing what you can to protect people. It's not enough. It's never enough. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping this on you. It's not appropriate. Stop. Ethan turned off the stove, giving her his full attention. You're allowed to feel things. You're allowed to hate the impossible position you've been put in, and you're allowed to talk to me about it. He heard her take a shaky breath. Thank you. Are you okay? Really? I will be. Eventually. A pause. Are we still on for tomorrow, the soccer game? Absolutely, unless you need to cancel. No, I need... Her voice softened. I need something good. Something that isn't spreadsheets and termination notices. I need to see you. The raw honesty in her words made Ethan's breath catch. We'll be there. I promise. After they hung up, Ethan stood in his tiny kitchen, Noah chattering at the table about his day at school, and felt the precarious balance of his life shift. Monday would bring fear and anger and uncertainty to the warehouse floor. People would lose their jobs, their security, their dignity. And Ethan would still have his position, protected by the woman who was becoming dangerously important to him. The guilt sat heavy in his stomach, but underneath it was something else: gratitude. Ferocious, overwhelming gratitude that Vivian had fought for him, that she'd seen his worth when so many others had looked right through him. Saturday dawned clear and cold, the kind of October day that promised winter was coming. Ethan dressed Noah in layers and drove them both to the soccer complex in the beat-up Honda, following the directions Vivian had texted. The field sprawled across a manicured park, tiny humans in colorful jerseys swarming like ants. Parents clustered on the sidelines with thermoses of coffee and folding chairs. He spotted Vivian immediately. She was standing with a woman who had to be Rebecca, both of them watching a small boy with dark hair execute a clumsy kick toward the goal. Vivian had abandoned her usual severe work attire for jeans and a soft burgundy sweater, her hair in a loose ponytail. She looked younger, more relaxed, more herself. "Vivian!" Noah pulled free from Ethan's hand and ran toward her with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of childhood. Vivian turned, her face lighting up. "Noah, you made it!" She crouched down to his level. "This is my nephew Miles. Miles, this is my friend Noah." The two boys regarded each other with the solemn assessment of their age group. Miles was slightly smaller than Noah, with Rebecca's warm eyes and Vivian's sharp intelligence visible in his expression. "You like dinosaurs?" Miles asked. "Yeah, Ankylosaurus are my favorite." "Mine's the T-Rex because they're fierce." Miles grabbed Noah's hand with zero hesitation. "Want to help me warm up? I'm really bad at dribbling." The boys ran off toward an empty patch of grass, and Ethan found himself standing with Vivian and Rebecca, who was studying him with undisguised interest. "So you're Ethan." Rebecca's smile was knowing. "The pancake recipient." "Rebecca," Vivian said warningly, but her cheeks were pink. "What? I'm just making conversation." Rebecca extended her hand to Ethan. "I'm Rebecca Chen, Vivian's infinitely more charming younger sister, and the doctor who saw your son." Ethan shook her hand. "Thank you for that. Noah's doing much better with the inhaler." "Good. He's a sweet kid." Rebecca glanced between them, her expression shifting to something more serious. "Vivian told me about the work situation. The layoffs. That's rough." "Yeah." Ethan didn't know what else to say. "My sister's been losing sleep over it all week. She cares more than she lets on." Rebecca's voice dropped so only Ethan could hear. "She's been alone a long time. It's good to see her letting someone in." Before Ethan could respond, Miles's game started, and they moved to the sidelines. Vivian stood close enough that their shoulders brushed, her focus on the field, but her presence entirely aware of him. When Miles scored a goal, more luck than skill, she cheered with genuine enthusiasm, and Ethan caught a glimpse of who she might have been without the armor of professional distance. Noah sat on the grass beside them, content to watch, his inhaler tucked safely in Ethan's pocket, just in case. At halftime, Rebecca produced a massive thermos of hot chocolate and a bag of cookies, distributing them with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. "Aunt Vivian, did you see my goal?" Miles bounced over, sweaty and grinning. "I did! That was amazing!" Vivian ruffled his hair with easy affection. "You're getting so much better." "Noah says his dad plays soccer sometimes. Is that true, Mr. Ethan?" Ethan laughed. "I used to play in high school. It's been a while." "Could you show me some tricks after the game? Mom says I need to work on my footwork." "Miles, Mr. Ethan didn't come here to be your personal coach," Rebecca chided gently. "I don't mind," Ethan said, "if there's time after." The second half of the game passed in a blur of near misses and enthusiastic but disorganized play. When it ended, Miles's team winning by a single point, the boys ran over flushed with victory and sugar from Rebecca's cookies. Ethan spent 20 minutes on the empty field showing Miles basic dribbling techniques, while Noah watched with the critical eye of someone who'd seen his dad do this before. Vivian and Rebecca sat on the grass nearby, their conversation low and animated. Ethan caught fragments of it, Rebecca's gentle teasing, Vivian's defensive but pleased responses. When Miles finally declared himself tired, Rebecca checked her watch. "We should head out. David's making dinner and will be insufferable if we're late." "Who's David?" Noah asked. "My husband, Miles's dad. He thinks he's a gourmet chef but can't make toast without setting off the smoke alarm." Rebecca's voice was full of affection. She turned to Vivian. "You should bring Ethan and Noah to dinner sometime. David would love to show off his cooking." "Rebecca." Vivian's voice carried a warning. "What? I'm being nice, making friends. Isn't that what you're always telling me to do?" Rebecca's grin was unrepentant. "Think about it. Open invitation." After they left, Vivian stood in the parking lot looking uncertain, her hands shoved in her pockets against the cold. "I'm sorry about my sister. She's enthusiastic." "She's great," Ethan said honestly. "And Miles is a good kid." "He is." Vivian glanced at Noah, who was climbing on the playground equipment nearby. "Thank you for coming today, for being patient with him." "I liked it. It was—" Ethan searched for the right word. "Normal, nice normal. As opposed to abnormal nice? As opposed to the kind of nice that feels too good to be real." Ethan met her eyes. "Like this weekend. Like you." Vivian's expression softened. "You're real, Ethan. This is real, however complicated it gets." They stood there in the cold afternoon light, and Ethan felt the question hovering between them. The "what are we doing" question, the "where's this going" question, the "how do we navigate this" question. "I should get Noah home," he said instead. "Early bedtime tonight." "Of course." Vivian didn't move. "Ethan, Monday's going to be hard at work. People are going to be angry, scared. Some of that anger will probably get directed at me. I know. If you need to keep your distance professionally, I'll understand. I don't want to make things difficult for you." Ethan thought about that, about the easy path of pretending they barely knew each other, of protecting himself from workplace gossip and complicated questions. Then he thought about Vivian standing in her kitchen at midnight, making hot chocolate for his son, about the way she'd fought to keep his job safe, about the loneliness in her voice when she'd said she needed something good. "I'm not keeping my distance," he said firmly. "We're friends. I don't abandon my friends when things get hard." Vivian's eyes were bright, almost tearful. "Thank you." Monday morning came too soon. Ethan arrived at the warehouse to find the parking lot fuller than usual, everyone having received the mandatory meeting notification. The mood was tense, anxious, everyone knowing what was coming, but not who would be hit. The meeting was held in the warehouse's break area, too many bodies crammed into too small a space. Vivian stood at the front with two HR representatives from corporate, her face a mask of professional neutrality. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes. The senior HR rep delivered the news with corporate efficiency. 22 positions eliminated across receiving, inventory management, and loading dock, effective immediately. Severance packages would be provided, outplacement services offered, deep regret expressed in words that meant nothing. Then he read the names. Marcus's face went gray. Jennifer started crying silently. Tom just stared at the floor, his weathered hands clenched into fists. Around the room, similar scenes played out. Shock, anger, devastation hitting in waves. "This is bullshit," someone shouted from the back. "We're the ones keeping this place running, and they're tossing us out like garbage." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The HR rep tried to continue, but the room was growing hostile, angry voices overlapping. "Ms. Hart!" A voice cut through the noise. Jerry, from loading dock, his face red with fury. "You signed off on this, didn't you? You're the one who decided we were expendable." All eyes turned to Vivian. Ethan saw her take a barely perceptible breath before responding, her voice steady and clear. "I was part of the review process, yes. These decisions were made by corporate leadership based on financial projections and operational requirements." Her voice carried across the room. "But I want to be clear. I fought for every position I could save. I advocated for alternatives, and I take no satisfaction in this outcome." But you still did it, Jerry shot back. You still destroyed people's lives. Yes. Vivian didn't flinch. I did my job, even though I hated it. And I know that doesn't make it better for anyone losing their position today. I'm sorry. Genuinely sorry. The raw honesty in her words seemed to take some of the heat out of the room. The meeting broke up shortly after, people clustering in small groups, some crying, some swearing, everyone processing the shock. Ethan found Marcus leaning against a pallet, staring at nothing. Man, I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly. 3 kids, you know? 3 kids and a mortgage, and Kelly just lost her job last month. Marcus's voice was hollow. How am I supposed to tell them I got laid off? The severance will help. And you're good at what you do. You'll find something else. Yeah, sure. Marcus looked at him, and something shifted in his expression. You didn't get cut. No? Figures. Ice Queen's got her favorites, I guess. The words hit like a slap. It's not like that, isn't it? Marcus pushed off the pallet. Funny how her little pet project keeps his job while the rest of us get screwed. He walked away before Ethan could respond, leaving him standing alone with the sick realization that this was only the beginning. The whispers would start now, the speculation, the resentment. Ethan made it through his shift on autopilot, scanning boxes, processing inventory, avoiding eye contact with everyone. At lunch, he ate alone in his car, too aware of the hostile glances in the break room. His phone buzzed. I know today was awful. I'm sorry you had to see that. Are you okay? V. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, I'm fine. You? Surviving. Barely. A pause, then, can we talk after work? Where? My office, 5:30? Ethan hesitated, aware of how it would look. Then he thought about the devastation in Vivian's voice when she'd called Friday night, about the loneliness she tried to hide behind professional competence and typed, I'll be there. The warehouse floor emptied quickly at 5, people eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Ethan waited until the parking lot had mostly cleared before making his way upstairs to the administrative offices. Vivian's door was slightly ajar, light spilling into the darkened hallway. He knocked softly. It's me. Come in. Vivian was sitting at her desk, surrounded by paperwork, still in her professional armor but looking exhausted. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her carefully applied makeup showing signs of being touched up multiple times. Hey, Ethan said softly, closing the door behind him. Hey. She stood, moving around the desk like she didn't know what to do with her hands. Thank you for coming. I know this probably looks inappropriate. I don't care what it looks like. Ethan crossed the small office in 3 steps and pulled her into a hug without thinking about it. For a moment, Vivian stood rigid with surprise. Then she melted into him, her face pressed against his shoulder, her whole body shaking with silent sobs she'd been holding back all day. Ethan held her, one hand moving in slow circles on her back, giving her permission to fall apart where no one else could see. I hate this, she whispered against his shirt. I hate what I had to do. I hate that people think I'm a monster. I hate that they're right. They're not right. You're not a monster. I destroyed people's lives today, Ethan. Good people. People with families and mortgages and... Her voice broke. And you're still here, being kind to me, and I don't understand why. Because I know who you are. Ethan pulled back enough to look at her face, using his thumb to wipe away the tears tracking through her makeup. I know you fought for them. I know you lost sleep trying to find alternatives. I know you care, even when caring makes this job impossible. Vivian's gray eyes searched his face. How do you do that? Do what? See the best in people, even when they don't deserve it. You deserve it. Ethan's voice was fierce. You deserve someone who sees you, Vivian. Really sees you, and I do. I see how hard you're trying. I see how much you care. I see you. Something shifted in her expression, vulnerability giving way to something more intense. She was looking at him the way she had Saturday at the soccer field, like he was something precious and unexpected. Ethan, she started, but whatever she was going to say died when Ethan's phone exploded with noise. Mrs. Patterson's name on the screen, her voice frantic when he answered. Ethan, Noah collapsed at school. They've taken him to County General. Something about breathing problems. The school called an ambulance. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. Ethan was moving before his brain fully processed the words. Vivian right behind him. I'm coming. I'm on my way. Which hospital? County General. Emergency room. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. It's not your fault. Thank you for calling me. He ended the call, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped his phone. Vivian grabbed his arm, steady and sure. I'm driving. Let's go. They ran. The drive to County General passed in a blur of streetlights and terror. Vivian drove with focused intensity, one hand on the wheel and the other reaching across to grip Ethan's trembling fingers. He couldn't speak, couldn't think beyond the primal fear screaming through his nervous system. Noah collapsed. Noah can't breathe. Noah needs me. He's going to be okay, Vivian said, her voice steady even as she ran a red light. Kids are resilient. The inhaler's been working. This is probably just a flare-up. Ethan wanted to believe her, but his mind kept conjuring worst-case scenarios. Pneumonia, respiratory failure. The ventilator they'd put Sarah on after the accident. The machine breathing for her while Ethan held her hand and begged her not to leave him alone with a 2-year-old he didn't know how to raise. I can't lose him. The words tore out of him, raw and desperate. Vivian, I can't. He's all I have. If something happens to him, nothing's going to happen to him. She squeezed his hand harder. We're almost there. Hold on. County General's emergency entrance was chaos. Ambulances, people in scrubs rushing between automatic doors, the perpetual noise of human suffering condensed into one overwhelmed building. Vivian pulled up to the entrance with complete disregard for parking regulations. Go, I'll park and find you. Ethan was out of the car before it fully stopped, sprinting through the automatic doors into the fluorescent hell of the ER waiting room. The intake nurse looked up with practiced weariness. My son, Noah Cross, he was brought in by ambulance. Let me check. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with maddening slowness. Noah Cross, 8 years old, respiratory distress. He's in exam room 7. Down that hallway, take the second right. Ethan was moving before she finished, following the maze of corridors until he found room 7. Through the small window, he could see Noah on a hospital bed, an oxygen mask over his small face, his chest rising and falling too fast. A doctor was listening to his lungs with a stethoscope, her expression focused. Ethan pushed through the door. Noah! His son's eyes found him, and even through the oxygen mask, Ethan could see the fear. Daddy! I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. Ethan was at the bedside in an instant, taking Noah's small hand in his. What happened? The doctor straightened, introducing herself as Dr. Martinez. Are you Noah's father? Yes? What's wrong with him? Is he okay? He had an acute asthma attack during recess. The school called the ambulance when his rescue inhaler didn't provide sufficient relief. Dr. Martinez gestured to the IV in Noah's arm. We've given him albuterol and a steroid to open his airways. His oxygen saturation is improving, but we're going to keep him on supplemental oxygen for a while. Asthma, not pneumonia, not respiratory failure, just asthma. Ethan felt his knees go weak with relief. But he's going to be okay. He should be fine. We'll monitor him for a few hours, make sure his breathing stabilizes. But this was serious, Mr. Cross. Has Noah been using his maintenance inhaler consistently? Yes, twice a day, every day, exactly like prescribed. Dr. Martinez made a note on her tablet. Sometimes kids develop exercise-induced symptoms despite proper management. We may need to adjust his medication protocol. She looked at Noah with a gentle smile. You gave everyone quite a scare, young man. Noah's voice was muffled behind the oxygen mask. I'm sorry. Nothing to be sorry for, buddy. Ethan stroked his son's hair, fighting back tears. You couldn't help it. A knock at the door, and Vivian appeared, slightly out of breath. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I should... She caught sight of Noah, and her expression shifted to relief. Oh, thank heavens. You're okay. Miss Vivian. Noah tried to sit up, but the oxygen tubing held him back. I had an asthma attack. It was scary. I bet it was. Vivian moved to the other side of the bed, her professional composure cracking to show genuine concern. But You're safe now. The doctors are taking good care of you. Dr. Martinez glanced between them. I'll give you some privacy. A nurse will be by to check his vitals every 30 minutes. Press the call button if you need anything. After she left, Ethan sank into the chair beside Noah's bed, his adrenaline finally crashing. Vivian stood awkwardly by the door, clearly uncertain of her place in this intimate family crisis. You can stay, Ethan said quietly. Please. She nodded and pulled over another chair, sitting close enough that her knee pressed against his. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the beep of monitors and the hiss of oxygen, watching Noah's breathing gradually slow to something closer to normal. Dad? Noah's voice was small behind the mask. Am I going to die like Mommy did? The question shattered Ethan's already fractured composure. Nobody, no, this is completely different. Mommy was in an accident. You just have asthma, which lots of kids have, and it's totally manageable with medicine. But I couldn't breathe. It felt like Noah's voice hitched. It felt really bad. I know it did. Ethan climbed carefully onto the bed beside his son, gathering him into his arms around the IV lines and oxygen tubing. But you're okay now. The medicine's working. You're safe. Noah burrowed into his father's chest, and Ethan held him, one hand over his son's heart, feeling it beat steady and strong. Across the bed, Vivian was very quiet, her gray eyes suspiciously bright. An hour passed, then 2. Noah dozed fitfully, waking periodically with small sounds of distress before Ethan's reassuring presence lulled him back to sleep. Doctor. Martinez returned to check his progress, declaring his oxygen levels stable enough to remove the mask and downgrade to nasal cannula. We're going to keep him overnight for observation, she explained. Standard protocol for pediatric asthma attacks, but barring any complications, he should be able to go home tomorrow. Overnight? Noah's eyes widened. I have to sleep here? Just for one night, buddy, to make sure you're all better. Will you stay with me? Of course I will. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. We'll get him moved to a pediatric room shortly. Much more comfortable than the ER. She glanced at Vivian. Visiting hours technically end at 8, but we're flexible for parents. I'm not... Vivian started, then stopped. I'll head out soon, let you both rest. But she didn't leave. Not when they moved Noah to a proper room with a window and a fold-out chair that converted into a makeshift bed. Not when a nurse brought dinner trays that Noah picked at without interest. Not when the sun set and the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm of distant beeps and soft footsteps. Around 7:30, Vivian's phone rang. She stepped into the hallway to answer it, her voice low. When she returned, her expression was conflicted. That was Rebecca. She heard about Noah. I texted her earlier, and she's offering to come sit with you. Bring food, keep you company, whatever you need. That's kind of her. Ethan glanced at Noah, who'd finally fallen into a deeper sleep. But we're okay. Ethan. Vivian sat down in the chair beside him. You've been here for 3 hours. You haven't eaten. You're running on pure adrenaline and fear. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're terrified and exhausted and trying to hold it together for Noah. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. Let someone help you. Let me help you. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same fear he felt reflected in her eyes. She'd driven like a maniac to get him here, stayed through the chaos and uncertainty, sat vigil beside him, even though she had no obligation, no role in this family crisis. Why are you still here? He asked softly. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was raw with honesty. Because when Mrs. Patterson called and I saw the look on your face, she paused, collecting herself. I've never been so scared in my life. And I realized that somewhere between hot chocolate and soccer games and holding your hand in the car, you and Noah stopped being just my friend and his son. You became... She struggled for the words. You became people I can't imagine losing. The admission hung in the air between them, too honest, too vulnerable for the sterile hospital room. Ethan reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. I'm glad you're here, he said simply. They sat like that as evening deepened into night, their joined hands resting on the arm of Ethan's chair, occasionally talking in whispers but mostly just existing in shared silence. Around 9, a nurse came by with extra blankets and pillows. "You should try to sleep," she said kindly. "He's stable and will wake you if anything changes." Vivian stood, finally acknowledging the lateness of the hour. "I should go. Let you rest." "Vivian." Ethan stood too, reluctant to let her leave. "Thank you for everything today, for getting me here, for staying, for—" His voice caught. "For caring about him. About us. There's nowhere else I would have been." She touched his face briefly, a gesture so tender it made Ethan's breath catch. "Call me tomorrow when you know more. I'll come pick you up, take you home, whatever you need." "You don't have to." "I want to." Her smile was soft. "Get some sleep, Ethan." She left, and the room felt immediately emptier. Ethan settled into the uncomfortable fold-out chair, pulled the scratchy hospital blanket over himself, and tried to sleep. But his mind wouldn't shut off, replaying the terror of that phone call, the sprint through the hospital, the sight of Noah struggling to breathe. Around midnight, Noah woke with a whimper. "Dad?" "I'm here, buddy." Ethan was at the bedside instantly. "You okay? Need the nurse?" "No, I just—" Noah's voice was small, young, scared. "I had a bad dream. About Mommy." Ethan's heart clenched. They didn't talk about Sarah often. Noah had been so young when she died that his memories of her were fragmentary, built more from photographs than actual recollection. "Want to tell me about it?" "She was in the car, and she was calling for me, but I couldn't get to her." Tears slipped down Noah's cheeks. "And then she was gone, and I was alone, and I couldn't breathe." The parallel to today's attack wasn't subtle. Ethan climbed carefully onto the bed again, gathering his son close. "You're not alone, Noah. You're never going to be alone. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." Ethan held him tighter. "I'm your dad. That means I'm here for the scary stuff and the good stuff, and everything in between. Always." Noah was quiet for a moment, then, "Is Ms. Vivian going to be part of our family now?" The question caught Ethan completely off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "She acts like family. She worries about us like family does. And she makes you smile like you do in the pictures with Mommy." Noah's voice was matter of fact, the brutal honesty of childhood. "I like it when you smile." Ethan felt tears pressing hot behind his eyes. "I like it when I smile too, buddy." "So is she?" "I don't know yet. Maybe. Would that be okay with you?" Noah considered this with the seriousness of someone weighing an important decision. "Yeah, I think so. She's nice, and she makes good pancakes." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "She does make good pancakes." They dozed fitfully for the rest of the night, Noah waking periodically for vital checks, Ethan never quite achieving real sleep. Morning came with weak sunlight through the window and a cheerful nurse bearing breakfast trays. Dr. Martinez appeared at 8, reviewing Noah's charts with approval. "His oxygen levels have been stable all night. Breathing sounds clear. I'm comfortable discharging him today with a revised medication plan." Relief flooded through Ethan. "So he's okay? Really okay?" "Really okay. But we need to be more aggressive with his asthma management. I'm prescribing a stronger maintenance inhaler and adding a peak flow meter so you can monitor his lung function at home." She handed Ethan a stack of papers. "I'm also recommending a follow-up with a pediatric pulmonologist within the next 2 weeks." More appointments. More specialists. More medical bills Ethan couldn't afford. But Noah was alive and breathing, and that was all that mattered. "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for everything." After Dr. Martinez left, Ethan pulled out his phone and texted Vivian. "He's being discharged. Should be ready to leave around 10. Her response came immediately. "I'll be there. Do you need me to pick up the prescriptions first?" "You don't have to do that." "Ethan, stop being stubborn and let me help." He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "Okay, thank you." The discharge process took longer than expected. Paperwork, medication counseling, instructions for home care. By the time they were finally cleared to leave, it was nearly 11. Ethan helped Noah into a wheelchair per hospital policy, and they made their way down to the main entrance. Vivian's Audi was waiting at the curb, and she jumped out when she saw them, her expression tight with concern, despite the good news. "Hey," she crouched beside Noah's wheelchair. "How are you feeling?" "Tired and hungry? Hospital food is gross." Vivian laughed. "We'll get you something good on the way home. What sounds good?" "Chicken nuggets?" "Chicken nuggets it is." The drive-through stop at Noah's favorite fast food place felt surreal. This strange new normal where Vivian was just part of their routine, where she knew without asking that Noah liked his nuggets with honey mustard and that Ethan would claim he wasn't hungry but would eat half of Noah's fries anyway. Back at the apartment, Vivian helped Noah settle on the couch with his lunch and a cartoon while Ethan unpacked the medication she'd already picked up. 4 different prescriptions, the peak flow meter, and a pamphlet about managing pediatric asthma. The pharmacy receipt was face down on the counter, and when Ethan flipped it over, his stomach dropped. $347. "Vivian?" He turned to find her standing in the kitchen doorway. "I can't let you keep paying for—" "We're not doing this again." Her voice was firm but gentle. "Noah needed his medications. I was at the pharmacy anyway. It's done. I'm going to pay you back, every cent, for this, for the first prescriptions, for Ethan." She crossed the small kitchen and took his hands. "Stop keeping score. Stop treating kindness like a debt. I help because I want to, not because I'm expecting repayment." "But it's too much. All of it is too much." "For who? For you to accept or for me to give?" Her gray eyes were intense. "Because from where I'm standing, helping you and Noah is the first thing I've done in years that actually feels like it matters." Ethan looked at their joined hands, at the woman who'd driven him to the hospital without hesitation, who'd stayed through the long, frightening night, who'd picked up prescriptions and chicken nuggets and showed up over and over when he'd spent 6 years learning that no one showed up. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted quietly. "How to let someone in. How to trust that you're not going to disappear." "I'm not going anywhere," Vivian's voice was fierce. "I know we've only known each other a few weeks. I know this is fast and complicated and probably reckless. But Ethan—" She paused, her composure cracking to show the vulnerability underneath. "I'm falling for you, for both of you. And that terrifies me because I don't do this. I don't let people close. But with you, I can't seem to help it." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and impossible to take back. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Vivian, He struggled for words adequate to the moment. "When Sarah died, I shut down. I had to, because falling apart wasn't an option with a 2-year-old depending on me. And I've spent 6 years just surviving, going through the motions, telling myself that was enough." He met her eyes. "But then you saw me in that parking lot, and you didn't look away. And you kept not looking away, even when it got complicated, even when it was hard. And His voice cracked. "I'm falling for you too, so hard it scares the hell out of me." Vivian's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. "You're the first person in 6 years who's made me think I could be something more than just Noah's dad. That I could be Ethan." She said his name like a prayer. "You're already so much more than you know." They stood in his tiny kitchen, the sounds of cartoons drifting in from the living room, and Ethan felt the weight of 6 years of loneliness finally start to lift. He wanted to kiss her, wanted it with an intensity that made his hands shake. But Noah was 10 feet away, and this moment felt too fragile, too new. "We should talk about what this means," Vivian said softly. "About work, about boundaries, about how we navigate this without either of us getting hurt. I know, we will, just—" Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Can we just exist in this for a minute? Before we have to figure out all the complicated parts?" "Yes." Her hands came up to cover his. "We can do that." They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, letting themselves feel the terrifying, beautiful enormity of what they were admitting. Then Noah called from the living room, asking if they had any juice boxes, and the spell broke. Vivian smiled, stepping back. "I should probably go. Probably let you both rest." "Stay." The word came out before Ethan could second-guess it. "Please, just for a little while. We could watch a movie with Noah or just—" "I don't want you to go yet." Something in Vivian's expression softened completely. Okay, I'll stay. They spent the afternoon on Ethan's worn couch. Noah between them, watching animated movies and eating popcorn Vivian had somehow produced from his nearly empty cupboards. It was domestic and ordinary and perfect, this small pocket of normalcy carved out of crisis. Around 4, Noah fell asleep, his head on Ethan's lap, exhaustion finally claiming him. Vivian helped transfer him to bed, and they stood in the doorway of his small bedroom watching him sleep. "He's resilient," Vivian whispered. "He's going to be fine." "I know. Doesn't stop me from worrying. That's what love is, I think. Beautiful, terrifying worry." She glanced at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Earlier, Noah asked if I was going to be part of your family." She paused. "What did you tell him?" Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "I told him I didn't know yet, that maybe you would be, and he said that would be okay with him." "Just okay?" There was something vulnerable in her voice, something almost shy. "Well, he also said you make good pancakes, so that was a strong endorsement." Vivian laughed softly. "High praise indeed." They moved back to the living room, sitting closer together on the couch than strictly necessary. Ethan could feel the warmth of her beside him, could smell her perfume, could count the different shades of gray in her eyes if he wanted to. "Vivian," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something. About Sarah. About how she died." He felt her go still beside him, her hand finding his. "You don't have to." "I want to." Ethan took a breath, steadying himself. It was February, cold, snowy, roads were terrible. Sarah had been out with friends, and she was driving home around 11. There was a guy, drunk, running a red light at 60 miles an hour. He hit her driver's side door. His voice was steady, clinical, the way it got when he told this story. "She died on impact. Never felt anything," they said, like that was supposed to make it better. Vivian's grip on his hand tightened. Noah was 2. He kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and I didn't know how to explain death to someone who'd just learned to talk in full sentences. Ethan's voice cracked. "I was 26 years old, working retail, living paycheck to paycheck, and suddenly I was a single parent to a toddler who missed his mother, and I didn't know how to do any of it." "But you figured it out," Vivian said softly. "You kept him safe, kept him loved, raised him into that sweet, smart boy sleeping in there." "I did my best. Some days that felt like enough. Most days it didn't." Ethan turned to face her fully. "I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. I'm damaged goods, Vivian. I'm a widow with a kid and medical debt in an apartment with a leaky ceiling. I work in a warehouse because it's the best I can do with a high school diploma. I'm not—" He gestured helplessly. "I'm not someone you should want." Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was fierce with conviction. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who showed up in a storm because his son needed him. Someone who works himself to exhaustion to provide for his child. Someone who's kind to strangers and reads science fiction and makes his kid chocolate chip pancakes on Saturdays." She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I see someone strong and decent and real. And yes, you have a complicated life. So do I. My ex-husband left because he said I cared more about work than our marriage. And he was right. I'm a workaholic with control issues who doesn't know how to ask for help. We're both broken in our own ways." "So what do we do?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "We be broken together," Vivian smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "We figure it out as we go. We make mistakes and forgive each other and try to build something real out of all this mess." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, fear giving way to something that felt dangerously like hope. "I want that. I want to try." "So do I." Vivian leaned in slowly, giving him time to pull away. But Ethan didn't pull away. He met her halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and perfect. It lasted only a moment before they broke apart, but Ethan felt it everywhere, the warmth, the connection, the promise of something more. That was... He struggled for words. "Yeah," Vivian agreed, her smile bright and real. "It really was." They sat together on the couch as afternoon faded into evening, talking in low voices about everything and nothing, about work complications and HR policies, and how to navigate their relationship without compromising either of their positions, about Noah and what he needed, about taking things slow for his sake, about fear and hope, and the terrifying prospect of letting someone matter. When Vivian finally left around 7, Ethan walked her to the door, reluctant to let her go. "Thank you," he said for probably the 20th time that day. "For everything." "Stop thanking me." But her voice was warm. "Get some rest. Make sure Noah takes his evening medication. And call me tomorrow?" "I will." Ethan caught her hand as she turned to leave. "Vivian, I meant what I said earlier, about falling for you." Her smile could have lit the entire building. "Good, because I meant it too." After she left, Ethan checked on Noah, still sleeping peacefully, then stood at his apartment window watching the street below. Vivian's taillights disappeared into traffic, but the warmth she'd left behind remained. His phone buzzed with a text. "Made it home. Thank you for letting me be part of today, even the scary parts. V." Ethan smiled and typed back. "Thank you for showing up, for all of it. Sleep well. You too. Sweet dreams, Ethan." He stood there with his phone in his hand, rereading her messages like a teenager, feeling the unfamiliar flutter of possibility in his chest. Tomorrow would bring its own complications: work, medical bills, the careful navigation of a relationship that violated half a dozen professional boundaries. But tonight, in the quiet of his shabby apartment with his son breathing peacefully in the next room, Ethan let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope that maybe, just maybe, he deserved the good things too. The following weeks unfolded with a careful choreography of boundaries and stolen moments. At work, Ethan and Vivian maintained professional distance. Polite nods in hallways, brief exchanges about inventory reports, nothing that would fuel the gossip already simmering after the layoffs. But outside those walls, they were building something real. Vivian came over on Wednesday evenings after Noah's bedtime, and they'd sit on Ethan's worn couch drinking cheap wine and talking until midnight. She helped Noah with his science project on weekends, her meticulous attention to detail transforming a cardboard solar system into something actually impressive. Ethan met Rebecca and her husband David for dinner, enduring their good-natured teasing about how Vivian smiled more in one evening than she had in the past 3 years. It was careful and deliberate, and nothing like the whirlwind romance Ethan had shared with Sarah. This was something quieter, built on mutual respect and genuine friendship, two people choosing each other despite the complications. But complications had a way of demanding attention. 3 weeks after Noah's hospital stay, Ethan was called to a meeting with HR. His stomach dropped the moment he saw the email. Meetings with HR were never good news, especially not in the aftermath of layoffs. He showed up at the appointed time, palms sweating, to find Vivian already seated across from Margaret Chen, the head of human resources. "Mr. Cross, please sit." Margaret's expression was professionally neutral. "This is a routine check-in regarding workplace relationships and company policy." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. He glanced at Vivian, but her face was carefully blank. "As you know," Margaret continued, "Wellington Distribution has clear policies regarding relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Mrs. Hart came to me 2 weeks ago to disclose that she and you have entered into a personal relationship outside of work." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Ethan found his voice. "We've been careful to keep things professional at work. There's been no favoritism. No, I'm aware." Margaret's tone softened slightly. "Ms. Hart has been very thorough in documenting that your performance evaluations and work assignments have remained consistent with your established patterns. However, the policy is clear. A supervisor cannot maintain a romantic relationship with a direct report." Ethan felt the floor drop out from under him. "So you're firing me?" "No." Margaret glanced at Vivian, then back to Ethan. "We're offering you a transfer. There's an opening for an inventory supervisor at our North Side facility. Same pay grade, better hours, and you'd report to a different division manager. It would eliminate the conflict of interest." Supervisor. The word hit Ethan like a physical blow. "I'm not qualified to be a supervisor." Your performance metrics suggest otherwise. Vivian spoke for the first time, her voice carefully professional. You have the highest accuracy rates in inventory management, strong leadership qualities, and 3 years of demonstrated reliability. The position requires someone who understands the work from the ground up. You're more than qualified. Ethan stared at her. This was the opportunity she'd mentioned before, the promotion he'd been too afraid to imagine. But now it came tangled with their relationship, with questions of whether he'd earned it or whether it was favoritism dressed up as merit. I need time to think about it, he said. Margaret nodded. Of course. We'll need your decision by the end of the week. In the meantime, Ms. Hart will remain your supervisor, but we ask that you both continue to maintain professional boundaries during work hours. The meeting ended, and Ethan walked out feeling like he'd been hit by a truck. Vivian caught up with him in the parking lot during lunch break, her professional mask finally cracking. Talk to me, she said. Tell me what you're thinking. I'm thinking this is exactly what I was afraid of. Ethan's voice was tight. People are going to say I slept my way into a promotion, that you gave me special treatment because we're together. You earned this position before we were together. The opening existed before any of this started. Vivian's frustration was evident. I went to HR specifically to avoid this kind of conflict. I disclosed our relationship, I requested the transfer option, I made sure everything was documented and above board. I know you did, but that doesn't change how it looks. So what are you saying? You're going to turn down a promotion you've earned because you're worried about optics? Her eyes flashed. That's not protecting your integrity, Ethan. That's letting fear make your decisions. The words stung because they were true. Ethan had spent 6 years playing it safe, choosing security over risk, survival over growth. The idea of stepping into a leadership role, of claiming space he'd been taught he didn't deserve, terrified him more than any workplace gossip. I don't know if I can do it, he admitted quietly. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? Vivian's expression softened. Then you'll learn and get better. That's what everyone does. She moved closer, lowering her voice. I know you're scared. I know you've spent years believing you're not enough. But Ethan, you are. You're smart and capable, and you work harder than anyone I've ever met. Stop letting your fear decide your future. Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to take the leap and trust that he could be more than just a warehouse worker barely keeping his head above water. But the voice of self-doubt was loud and insistent. Can I think about it? He asked. Really think about it? Not just react from fear? Of course. Vivian squeezed his hand briefly. Take your time. Make the choice that's right for you and Noah. That night, Ethan called Rebecca. He'd grown close to Vivian's sister over the past weeks, appreciating her straightforward warmth and her willingness to talk about Vivian without the filter of professional distance. So let me get this straight, Rebecca said after he'd explained the situation. You have the opportunity for a better job, better hours, more money, and you're considering turning it down because you're worried about what people will think? When you put it like that, it sounds stupid. Because it is stupid. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. Ethan, I've watched my sister fall for exactly 3 people in her entire life. Her college boyfriend, her ex-husband, and you. And you're the only one who's ever seen past the Ice Queen thing to the actual human being underneath. You're good for her. She's good for you. Don't sabotage that because you're scared. What if I'm not good enough? For the job, for her, for any of this? What if you are? Rebecca countered. What if you take the job and you're amazing at it? What if you and Vivian build something real? What if you give Noah the example of a father who took risks and chose growth over fear? She paused. Stop waiting for permission to believe you deserve good things. After they hung up, Ethan sat in his living room listening to Noah practice his reading in the next room, stumbling over big words with determined persistence. His son never questioned whether he was good enough. He just kept trying, kept learning, kept growing. Maybe it was time Ethan did the same. He called Vivian. I'm taking the job. The relief in her voice was palpable. Yeah? Yeah. I'm terrified, and I probably have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm taking it. He took a breath. And I'm doing it because I earned it. Not because of you, not because of favoritism, but because I'm actually good at my job, and it's time I started believing that. You are good at your job, Vivian's voice was warm with pride. "You're going to be an amazing supervisor." "I hope so." Ethan paused. "This means we can stop sneaking around at work, right? No more pretending we barely know each other?" "Well, we still need to be professional, but yes, no more hiding." She laughed softly. "I'm really proud of you, you know that?" "I'm trying to be proud of me, too." The transfer took effect 2 weeks later. Ethan's last day at the main facility was bittersweet. Handshakes from coworkers who'd become friends, a slightly awkward goodbye from those who still blamed him for surviving the layoffs. But when he walked out of that warehouse for the last time, he felt lighter than he had in years. The Northside facility was smaller, newer, better organized. His new manager, Patricia Okoye, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who made it clear she expected excellence but was willing to teach him how to deliver it. "You come highly recommended," she said on his first day. "Ms. Hart speaks very well of your work ethic and attention to detail. Don't make her a liar." Ethan worked harder than he'd ever worked, learning scheduling systems and personnel management and how to navigate the delicate balance of being someone's supervisor when 2 months ago he'd been the one taking orders. It was exhausting and challenging and exactly what he needed. Meanwhile, his relationship with Vivian deepened into something neither of them had expected. She spent more time at his apartment than her own house, helping Noah with homework while Ethan made dinner, the three of them falling into comfortable routines. Movie nights on Fridays. Pancakes on Saturday mornings. Sunday afternoons at the park, where Noah would run himself ragged on the playground while Ethan and Vivian sat on a bench talking about everything and nothing. It was domestic and ordinary and beautiful. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't finished testing them. 6 weeks into Ethan's new position, Noah had another asthma attack, this time at school during gym class, severe enough that the school called an ambulance. Ethan's phone rang during a morning meeting, and the familiar spike of parental terror had him apologizing to Patricia and sprinting for his car before anyone could object. He called Vivian from the road. "It's happening again. Noah's on his way to County General. I can't—" His voice broke. "I can't do this again. I'm leaving now. I'll meet you there." This time felt different. Worse. Noah's oxygen saturation was dangerously low, and the ER doctor's expression was grave as she explained they were admitting him to the pediatric ICU for aggressive treatment. Ethan stood beside his son's bed, watching machines breathe for him, and felt the world narrow to this one terrible moment. Vivian arrived 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes, her hair disheveled from running. She took one look at Ethan's face and pulled him into a fierce embrace. "He's going to be okay," she said, but her voice shook with uncertainty. "You don't know that." Ethan's words were muffled against her shoulder. "Last time you said that and he was okay, but what if this time? What if I lose him?" "You're not going to lose him." Vivian held him tighter. "He's strong. He's a fighter. He's your son." They sat vigil together through the long afternoon, watching Noah's small chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Rebecca appeared around 6, still in her scrubs from her own practice, her professional assessment both reassuring and terrifying. "His lungs are inflamed, but responding to treatment," she explained quietly. "The steroid should start working within 24 hours. But Ethan—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "His asthma is more severe than we initially thought. He's going to need ongoing specialist care, possibly immunotherapy, definitely closer monitoring. More appointments, more medications, more money Ethan didn't have." As if reading his thoughts, Rebecca added, "I have a colleague at Children's Hospital who specializes in pediatric pulmonology. I can get Noah in to see her, and I'll make sure the billing department works with you on payment plans." Ethan nodded, too exhausted to argue about accepting help. That night, sitting in the uncomfortable hospital chair while Noah slept fitfully, Vivian took Ethan's hand. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. Ethan's stomach clenched. "Okay." "I've been offered a position, regional director for Wellington's entire West Coast operations. It's a significant promotion, more money, more responsibility." She paused. It would mean relocating to Seattle." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "When would you have to move?" "They want an answer by next week. If I accept, I'd start in 2 months." Vivian's voice was carefully neutral, but Ethan could hear the conflict underneath. It's the kind of opportunity that comes once in a career, the the kind that could set me up for VP-level positions down the road. You should take it. The words tasted like ash, but Ethan forced them out. It's an incredible opportunity. I don't want to leave you. Vivian's professional mask cracked completely. I don't want to leave Noah. I don't want to walk away from what we're building. But you want the job. I don't know what I want. She laughed, but it sounded broken. For the first time in my life, I have something that matters more than my career, and I don't know how to choose. Ethan looked at his son sleeping in the hospital bed, at the machines keeping him stable, at the future stretching out uncertain and complicated. He thought about 6 years of choosing safety over risk, of playing small because it hurt less than reaching for more. What if you didn't have to choose? He said quietly. Vivian looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? What if we came with you to Seattle? The idea was forming even as he spoke it, terrifying and exhilarating. Better hospitals for Noah. Fresh start for all of us. We could make it work. Ethan, you just started your new position. You can't just uproot your entire life. Why not? He turned to face her fully. I've spent 6 years being afraid. Afraid to take risks. Afraid to want more. Afraid to believe I deserved good things. But you, his voice cracked. You make me want to be brave. You make me believe I can be more than just surviving. What about Noah's school? Your apartment? The life you've built here? Noah's 8. He'll make new friends. The apartment is a rental with a month-to-month lease, and the life I've built, Ethan gestured around the sterile hospital room. It's held together with duct tape and determination. Maybe it's time to build something better. Vivian was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. You'd really do that? Leave everything for us? I'd do it for me too, Ethan said honestly, because I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of playing it safe. I want to take the leap and trust that we'll figure out how to fly. That's terrifying. I know. He squeezed her hand. But it's also kind of amazing, right? Vivian laughed, and it sounded like relief. It's completely insane. Moving across the country with a man I've known for 2 months, uprooting my entire life. When you put it that way, it does sound crazy. It is crazy. She cupped his face in her hands. Let's do it. Noah was discharged 3 days later, his breathing stabilized and his medication adjusted. The pediatric pulmonologist at Children's Hospital confirmed what Rebecca had suspected: severe persistent asthma that would require ongoing management but was entirely controllable with proper care. On the drive home from the hospital, Noah asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Dad, are we really moving to Seattle with Ms. Vivian? Ethan glanced at Vivian, then back at the road. How do you feel about that? Will I have to leave my school and Mrs. Patterson? You'd go to a new school, make new friends, but Mrs. Patterson will still be our friend, and we can call her whenever you want. Noah was quiet, processing. Then, will there be better doctors there for my asthma? Yes, buddy, some of the best children's hospitals in the country. And Ms. Vivian will be there? I'll be there, Vivian said from the passenger seat. Every day, if that's okay with you. Noah considered this with the gravity of someone weighing an important decision. Will you still make pancakes? Vivian laughed. Absolutely. Chocolate chip pancakes every Saturday morning if you want. Okay. Noah's voice was matter-of-fact. Then I think it's a good idea, as long as I can bring Mr. Whiskers. Mr. Whiskers definitely comes with us, Ethan assured him. The next month passed in a whirlwind of logistics. Vivian accepted the Seattle position. Ethan gave notice at the Northside facility, Patricia congratulating him on his courage, while admitting she'd miss his organizational skills. They found a house to rent in a Seattle neighborhood with good schools and proximity to Children's Hospital, a real house with a yard and enough bedrooms that Noah could have his own space and Ethan could set up a home office. The gossip at Wellington reached a fever pitch when word spread that Vivian and Ethan were moving to Seattle together. Some people were supportive. Others were predictably judgmental, but Ethan found he cared less about their opinions with each passing day. He was too busy packing up his old life and preparing for his new one. 2 weeks before the move, Rebecca hosted a goodbye dinner at her house. Miles and Noah played in the backyard while the adults sat around the patio table drinking wine and pretending they weren't all a little emotional about the impending separation. "You take care of my sister," Rebecca said to Ethan, her voice thick with feeling. "She acts tough, but she's softer than she lets on." "I know." Ethan glanced through the window at Vivian, who was helping the boys build an elaborate blanket fort in the living room. "I promise I will." "And you?" Rebecca turned to Vivian. "Stop trying to control everything. Let yourself be happy without questioning whether you deserve it." "I'm working on it," Vivian said, but her smile was genuine. The night before the move, Ethan stood in his empty apartment. Boxes stacked by the door, furniture sold or donated, 6 years of his life condensed into what could fit in a moving truck. Noah was spending the night at Rebecca's house, giving Ethan and Vivian time for final preparations. Vivian found him standing in the middle of the living room, looking around at the bare walls. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah, just saying goodbye, I guess." Ethan gestured to the empty space. "This was where I raised Noah, where I figured out how to be a single parent, where I survived when I wasn't sure I could." "It's a good place," Vivian said. "You should be proud of what you built here." "I am, but I'm ready to build something better." He turned to face her fully. "With you." Vivian stepped into his arms, and they stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the empty apartment. Then she pulled back, her expression nervous in a way he'd rarely seen. "I have something to ask you," she said, "and it's possibly terrible timing, and I might be completely overstepping, but Vivian, just ask." She took a breath. "Move in with me. Not just rent a place in the same city, but actually live together. You and Noah and me, building a home together." Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Are you sure? That's a big step." "I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Her voice was fierce with conviction. "I love you, Ethan. I love Noah. I want to wake up every morning with you both there. I want to make pancakes and help with homework and fight about whose turn it is to do dishes. I want all of it." "You love me?" Ethan's voice came out slightly strangled. "Yes, you idiot. I love you." Vivian laughed, nervous and hopeful. "I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I—" Ethan kissed her, cutting off her anxious rambling with the kind of kiss that communicated everything words couldn't. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. "I love you too," he said. "And yes, we'll move in with you. Build a home together. All of it." Vivian's smile was luminous. "Yeah? Yeah." Ethan pulled her close again. "You and me and Noah. A family." The move to Seattle was chaotic and exhausting and perfect. The house Vivian had found was everything she'd promised, sunny and spacious, with a backyard where Noah could run himself ragged, and a kitchen big enough for all of them to cook together. They spent the first week unpacking boxes and discovering which of their belongings fit together and which didn't, making decisions about furniture placement and whose books went on which shelves. It felt like playing house, except it was real. This was their life now. Noah adapted with the resilience of childhood, making friends at his new school within the first week, and declaring Seattle pretty cool, actually. His new pulmonologist set up a comprehensive treatment plan that included weekly monitoring and adjustments to his medication based on his activity levels and environmental factors. Ethan found work at a logistics company that valued his experience and offered him a position as an operations coordinator. Better title, better pay, better hours that let him be home when Noah got off the school bus. Vivian threw herself into her new role with characteristic intensity, but she made a conscious effort to leave work at the office, to be present for dinners and bedtimes and the small domestic moments that made a house a home. 3 months after the move, Ethan woke on a Saturday morning to the smell of pancakes and the sound of laughter from the kitchen. He padded downstairs to find Vivian and Noah engaged in an intense debate about whether Ankylosaurus could beat a T-Rex in a fight, both of them covered in flour, chocolate chips scattered across the counter. "Dad!" Noah spotted him in the doorway. "Tell Ms. Vivian that armor beats teeth." "Actually, I think you should call her something other than Ms. Vivian," Ethan said, his heart suddenly pounding, "since we're all living together now." Noah looked confused. "Like what?" Ethan glanced at Vivian, who'd gone very still by the stove. What would you think about calling her Vivian, or, he paused, or something else, if you wanted to? Understanding dawned in Noah's eyes. He looked at Vivian thoughtfully. Are you going to be my new mom? Vivian set down her spatula with trembling hands and crouched to Noah's level. I would never try to replace your mom, Noah. She'll always be your mom, and that's important. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I love you very much, and I'd be honored if you wanted me to be part of your family in whatever way feels right to you. Noah considered this with the seriousness of someone weighing a life-changing decision. Could I call you Vivian at home and Ms. Vivian at school, since it might be confusing otherwise? That sounds perfect, Vivian said, her voice thick with emotion. Okay, Noah nodded decisively. And you can help me with my science project because Dad is terrible at art. Hey, Ethan protested, but he was laughing. They ate pancakes at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the windows, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was home. Not the house, but the people in it. The woman across from him who'd seen him at his lowest and chosen to stay. The son beside him who was learning that family could be chosen, could be built from love and commitment instead of just biology. That night, after Noah was asleep, Ethan and Vivian sat on the back porch watching stars appear in the Seattle sky. Vivian was curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, both of them wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. I have something for you, Ethan said quietly. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Vivian's breath caught when she saw it. Inside was a simple ring, nothing extravagant because Ethan still had medical bills and moving expenses and the reality of his finances. But it was real, and it was perfect. Vivian Hart, he said, his voice shaking slightly. 6 months ago, I was stranded in a parking lot in the rain, convinced I'd never be more than just barely surviving. And then you saw me. Really saw me, and everything changed. He took a breath. I know this is fast. I know we've only been together a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Vivian was crying, tears streaming down her face, her smile brighter than all the stars above them. Yes, absolutely yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him with the kind of fierce joy that spoke of new beginnings and second chances, and the beautiful, terrifying courage it took to choose love. They were married 3 months later in Rebecca's backyard, a small ceremony with close friends and family. Noah served as ring bearer with solemn pride, Mr. Whiskers tucked into his suit pocket for moral support. Miles stood beside him as junior groomsman, the two boys having become inseparable over video calls and visits. Vivian wore a simple cream dress and flowers in her hair, looking nothing like the Ice Queen Ethan had first met, and everything like the woman who taught him what it meant to be seen. Ethan wore a suit Rebecca had helped him pick out, and when he saw Vivian walking toward him, he felt 6 years of grief and fear and loneliness finally release their hold. Rebecca officiated, because of course she did, her voice steady as she spoke about love that chooses courage over comfort, about families built from intention rather than accident, about two people who'd found each other in a storm and decided to build a shelter together. You may now kiss your bride, she said, grinning through her own tears. Ethan kissed his wife under a Seattle sky and felt the last pieces of his broken heart finally click into place. The reception was simple, catered food, a playlist of their favorite songs, toasts that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Noah gave a speech he'd written himself about how Vivian made the best pancakes and helped him with his math homework, and made his dad smile again. There wasn't a dry eye in the yard. As the evening wound down and guests began drifting home, Ethan found himself standing at the edge of the yard with Vivian, watching Noah and Miles chase fireflies in the fading light. This is it, isn't it? Vivian said softly. This is the life we chose. This is the life we built, Ethan corrected. Together. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, both of them watching their son play with the unconscious freedom of childhood. Ethan thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago, exhausted, isolated, convinced he didn't deserve more than mere survival. That man would never have believed this moment was possible. But that man had been seen, really seen. By a woman with gray eyes and a reputation for coldness who'd looked past his circumstances to the person underneath, who'd taught him that accepting help wasn't weakness, that taking risks could lead to reward, that love was worth choosing even when it was terrifying. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For not looking away. For making me believe I deserved good things." Vivian turned in his arms, her expression soft with love. "Thank you for letting me in, for showing me what home feels like, for giving me a family." They stood like that as twilight deepened into night, as fireflies sparked against the darkness, as their son's laughter rang out bright and clear. And Ethan thought about storms and power outages and chance encounters that changed everything. About the night he'd stood alone in the rain, stranded and desperate, and the woman who'd offered him a ride home. That night had changed his life. But not because Vivian had rescued him, because she'd seen him as someone worth knowing, worth caring about, worth choosing. And in being seen, Ethan had finally learned to see himself the same way. The night in the rain hadn't started a romance. It had started a revelation, and from that revelation, they'd built something neither of them had known they needed, a family born not from necessity or accident, but from conscious choice and courageous love. As Noah ran over demanding hot chocolate and stories, as Vivian laughed and promised both, as they walked together toward the warm house full of friends and family and joy, Ethan felt the last remnants of his old life fall away. He wasn't the stranded single dad anymore. He wasn't just surviving. He was home. Finally, beautifully, completely home. And it had all started with a storm, a woman who refused to look away, and the courage to believe he deserved the shelter she offered.